Welcome back to Fast Market. I'm Alex Coffey alongside Kevin Hinks. It's now time for our hashtag segment. Joining us here in studio, TD Ameritrade Network contributor Jenny Horn, and from LikeFolio.com, the co-founder Andy Swan. It's time to bring in reinforcements here, Kevin, because we're talking Starbucks, we're talking seasonal drinks, and Jenny, we were just talking about before this during the break. I am the target demographic for this because I love these pumpkin drinks. I gotta be honest.
I know, and they're all over social media, so I'm so curious to see what LikeFolio has to say because it sort of floods my Twitter. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do have to say that I am also the target demographic because it gets me in the store. I just tried their new Apple Crisp Macchiato, which was delicious, and I don't usually go to Starbucks, but it definitely got me in the door. So hey, I think that their marketing is working. But from a stock perspective, there's a lot going on in this company. They've underperformed the S&P 500 so far this year, but they have risen about 50% in the last 12 months. And really, a lot is going into their third quarter report. When you look at just the strength they really truly reported, they saw namely strength in their Chinese market internationally and also in the U.S. But management described their momentum as what I thought was very interesting as powerful momentum heading into the last quarter of 2021. So in the third quarter, which they reported back in July, they saw 78% comps growth year over year, which wasn't actually as significant as it sounds given the fact that they were comparing to, of course, last year when they saw so many store closures. But what was even more meaningful about this number was their core U.S. markets grew about 10% from 2019 levels, just showing that not only have they recovered from the pandemic, they're actually a stronger business than they were in 2019. Now, another thing that is hugely important is they launched over 350 stores in the third quarter, which to me sounds enormous, but they also plan to add 600 more locations to China this year, which accounts for more than half of their global total. So that is no small number. They are expanding and expanding rapidly globally. Plus, their operating margins now sit at about 20%, which puts the company on pace to actually improve beyond their pre-pandemic margins, which is really significant when you consider the fact that there are these rising labor costs sort of hitting a lot of different restaurant and sort of food distribution channels. Plus, the rewards members were up about 50% in the third quarter with about 24 million active members. And this is something we've sort of talked about has a degree of stickiness because you have this app. It's extremely easy to reload, almost too easy. And I think that's sort of a hidden way they can generate money because I just reloaded my app yesterday, didn't even think about it, $25, and I do that all the time.
And you can't do exactly how much you're trying to spend
Exactly,
either.
which is the dangerous part. So it's like increments, I think 10, 15. I usually just add 25, which goes way too fast. But of course, all over social media today is these newly launched fall drinks, which seems like they came actually earlier. Somehow it seems like fall is sneaking up on me this year, but that was all the rage. So I had to pull tweets, of course, that talked about that. So our first tweet of the day discusses that, which says, put Starbucks on my frequent watch list again with some alerts since the Pumpkin Spice Latte is back. 16-year-olds have some of the strongest buying power, their parents. Well, I think that is absolutely true. I have to say that Pumpkin Spice Lattes are apparently cool among Alex and myself. We're both not 16, so we also do have some buying power there. But our next tweet sort of echoes this same Pumpkin Spice Latte craze, which says, Starbucks Pumpkin Spice back in stores even earlier this year. Next year, it will be available on July 4th. By 2025, it will end December 1st and be available January 1st. Now, this is kind of a joke because, of course, it's their fall seasonal drink, but I just think this is funny because it sort of echoes the fact that this is hugely popular. You know, this is widely, there's high demand for it. It gets people like Alex and I in the store, Andy. So I have to think that, this success of this launch, what people call their PSL, has to drive momentum and has to drive mentions regarding Starbucks on Twitter, correct?
Yeah, it really does. It's a really big deal for the company. In fact, you could kind of, align this very similarly. This is what the keynote is to Apple. This fall menu drop is to Starbucks. And so we pay a lot of attention to it at LikeFolio. We pay a lot of attention to the consumer reaction to these new drinks, to the Pumpkin Spice Latte coming back and so on. And I have to say this year, we're seeing, what I would call an absolutely enormous hit. Demand that we're seeing, consumer demand up 27% higher versus 2020 and even 45% higher than 2019. And along with that, it's not just the demand boost that's, incredible and tells us that Starbucks is setting up for a really great season here. It's also the consumer happiness boost. We see that up 8 points just simply attributed to this fall menu being released. And 8 points, when you're talking about going from 64% happy to 71 or 72% happiness, is a really, really big deal. So that combination tells me that people are very excited about this menu, very excited to be going back to Starbucks. And this is one of those companies that just executed during the pandemic extraordinarily well. And it looks like they're executing coming out of it even better. So really kudos to Starbucks on this incredible release of their fall menu.
Okay, Andy, I've got several things to talk about. Number one, look at your visuals on this graph with the little leaves and everything and the autumn feel to your graph. I don't know, whoever's doing your work, you've upgraded. We all noticed, Andy. So now let's get to the meat of this. Somehow, Starbucks has been able to make coffee cool. And somehow, in a business that seems like everyone would make the same thing, they have a moat around their business that is unpenetrable, right? I mean, the only thing that comes close to this seems to be like Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin', and it's not even in the same category as these. But here's my question, Andy. If Andy Swan is the CEO of Starbucks, why can't you come up with more of these products that create a chart like we see annually around this time of the year? You can't come up with something around Easter and Christmas and summer, and why can't you do more of these things is what I'd be thinking if I'm Starbucks, because this company does everything they do right, Andy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know why they don't come out with this type of, release seasonally instead of annually, but it does seem to be a really seasonal thing. But you're right, the company executes really well no matter what they do. I mean, their app is unbelievable. The digital experience they have, the ordering experience that they were able to deliver while, other competitors were scrambling to figure out how to keep their doors open was really incredible. So this is a company that just really knows what it's doing and has for several decades. Mm-hmm. So and we've been wrong. To be honest, LikeFolio has been wrong on the bearish side against Starbucks a couple of times in the last few years, and I've had to eat my words several times because this is a company that just executes so well. And they've figured out ways to drive margin from the same consumer base, and not many others are doing that. So I think, again, I just have to say, when I saw this data, and even with the little graphic that Megan put on there, I was just blown away. And you just every once in a while you just have to tip your cap and say, really, job well done.
Yes.
No, I completely agree, Andy, and I gotta put the record straight here. This is the most public thing that I do, getting these drinks. I like the cold brew, though. I'm not the latte guy, but Andy, my question for you, though, is a little bit more from my skeptical side. Is the early release an indication that the quarter wasn't going so well?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what makes anybody want to do anything fall in August. I will never understand that. I have no desire to even think about it or talk about it, but apparently I am not the target audience for Starbucks. I do wonder about that, if they're trying to kind of extend this season because they need to. But we do see some macro tailwinds for Starbucks as well. There's a rising demand for coffee in general, up 20% quarter over quarter. And a lot of that's because consumers are returning to the office. We see that up 35% quarter over quarter. So I think there's macro tailwinds for Starbucks. It kind of, it doesn't make sense to me that they would need to have done this. But at the same time, I'm with you. I don't understand the timing on it.
Andy, I couldn't agree more. I could not echo anything you said more about August, because in Chicago we have like 9 months of winter, so I don't know why we're already sort of rushing into that, because August to me is completely summer. But regardless, I do live very close to the Starbucks Reserve, which I think is one of now their largest locations in the world, and it has a line legitimately wrapped around the block. It's like the hottest club in town. It always has a line of people waiting to get inside, COVID restrictions or not. I just think there's that much demand. And also, I live by about like a block radius from 3 different Starbucks, which is always funny to me that they have so many locations and they're always packed. So I guess my question to you is, does Dunkin' or say McDonald's, I know, which also has coffee and breakfast items, do they even compare in terms of consumer happiness? Because I would put Starbucks up there with an Apple or a Peloton, where they have sort of this cult-like loyalty that I don't really know who else matches.
Yeah, well, Duncan was close, and they still every once in a while are close in relevance. You know, they do have some, core penetration with an even younger audience. You know, the Dunkies, I think maybe they call themselves, or but Starbucks consistently wins. That's the takeaway. So there's always a company like Dunkin' or McDonald's can do coffee competently. But no matter what, it seems like Starbucks wins. And what we see, out of this fall drop is just another big win for Starbucks, because we really don't see, that this level of demand increase along with a happiness increase like we're seeing right now is just kind of one of those that just blows my mind.
Andy, clearly this one has some general correlation to the overall market. You can see the times where it's struggled. That's typically associated with times that the market itself has struggled. With the other moves that it's had lower or off highs in the past, it does tend to recover. And so do you see, with this strong data that you guys are watching, accompanied with a sell-off in the stock of about $11 off the highs, is this a potential entry point, or are you waiting for some further volatility to the downside?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's kind of not really been a wrong time to buy Starbucks stock over the last probably decade, or all time probably. So I think that probably continues. What I would say is that our data is showing, very clearly that Starbucks is very likely to have a very, very good rest of the year. And so I don't think that there's any reason outside of general market, stock market, macro conditions. But for Starbucks itself, from a micro perspective, there's no reason to think that they will stumble or fall in any major way over the next 3 to 5 months. So if you're looking at an entry point, I could kind of say now's as good a time as any.
A better companies to bet against is how I'd sum that up. Andy Swan, thanks as always. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up soon. Jenny, I'm not even sure that I associate these drinks with fall. I know that they have them in the fall, but I don't know that I would not like it if it was in February. I think it's just because I like the drink. So yeah.